Hi folks, welcome to today's video where we count down to the 12 most realistic space movies ever made. Ever since man landed on the moon in 1969, we knew that literally anything was possible now. Martian landings, intergalactic travels, contact with alien life, and even parallel universes. Thus started the space race, a new era where every nation, big or small, aimed for the stars. It was both glorious and terrifying. Humanity was reaching new heights, hitherto unknown, and it was this very fear of the unknown that made the whole idea of space travel thrilling and adventurous. When reality is this exciting, can cinema fall far behind? Obviously not. These films had chilling premises, nail-biting storylines, and they showed us the dark side of space tech and the even darker side of the human psyche when placed in a terrifying locale. So without much ado, let's begin. But before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. 1. Apollo 13. 1995. Imagine you're on a routine space flight 205,000 miles away from Earth, and suddenly you hear these words piercing through the void. Houston, we have a problem. That was the case with astronauts Jim Lovell, Fred Hayes, and Jack Swigert, who found themselves stuck in space in a crippled spacecraft in the middle of nowhere. Time is scarce, and NASA must devise a plan to get these moonlanders back on Earth. Meanwhile, the stranded crew must survive a debilitating feat in their quest for survival. Based on the 1970 space mission by Kennedy Space Center, the film is a docudrama on the trials and tribulations of the ill-fated Apollo 13 crew as they navigate a risky mission in the dark sky. It's a tale of undying heroism, unrelenting motivation, and an unquenchable thirst for survival. Creative, realistic, breathtaking. The storyline keeps you on edge and reminds you that the horror you see on screen doesn't stray far from lived reality. The film is an adaptation of the 1994 book Lost Moon: The Perilous Voyage of Apollo 13 by astronauts Jim Lovell and Jeffrey Kluger. The screenplay is visually enriched, not just because of the fascinating visuals of space, but also because we find one of the best casts ever. I mean, you can never go wrong with Tom Hanks. Add to that Kevin Bacon and Bill Paxton with their perfect roles. It's no wonder that Ron Howard reigns supreme amongst the most legendary personalities in filmdom.
Can you hear me? Martinez!
2. The Martian, 2015. If you think that getting stuck in the cold and darkness of space is the scariest thing ever, wait till you watch The Martian. Here, our main guy, the hero, astronaut Mark Watney, finds himself stranded all alone on Martian soil. The manned mission had landed a terrible fate when they were caught up in a fierce storm that led the rest of the crew to believe that Mark was dead. But the remarkable irony of human life is such. He not only begins colonizing the planet in his quest for survival, he also aims to reconnect with humanity. Mark is basically a 21st century Robinson Crusoe, Space Edition. He too journals his life, alone and estranged, living one day at a time on this hostile planet. He extracts resources from non-traditional sources to sustain himself, like getting water from rocket fuel, and manure from the crew's bio-waste to cultivate potatoes in the infertile soil. Overall, it's a great story. No one could have played the role of the stranded space botanist better than Matt Damon. There's adventure as the lone protagonist explores the planet in his white bubbly spacesuit. There's action, in the sense that we see here man's survival in a hitherto unimagined wilderness. There's also a lot of dust and a lot of sepia overtones, which goes well with the slow and pensive mood of the film. If you're looking for space aliens and glowy swords, remember, this is not Star Wars. If you're looking for over-the-top drama and witty comebacks, you'll be disappointed. The plot is slow, the depictions are uncannily real, and the cinematography comes as close as it can get to actual space travel and extraterrestrial habitation. So we'd totally recommend watching this one when you're in the mood for something serious instead of your average raunchy flicks.
Shutting it all down.
Yeah, I need power up!
3. Interstellar, 2014. Getting stranded in space or on a different planet is one thing, but what happens when you get stranded in the twisted corners of time? I'm not talking about time freezing here. We're dealing with advanced level stuff, like wormholes and interdimensional travel. Brace up, Because shit's about to get real. The film is set in an apocalyptic future where widespread crop blights and severe dust storms have made Earth inhospitable. Humanity runs the risk of extinction, and astronaut farmer Joseph Cooper is sent on a secret mission aboard the spacecraft Endurance to carry thousands of human embryos to a hospitable planet in outer space. Cooper has to leave his daughter behind, who is absolutely hysterical about letting her father go. But the mission calls the man. Things don't go exactly as planned, and Daddy Cooper will have to find a way to save himself, his crew, and the mission at large. He brainstorms ideas like traveling through wormholes and using the gravitational pull of a supermassive black hole to gain momentum. But he loses the most precious thing: time. 1 year on Miller's planet equals 7 years on Earth. So a few hours on the planet, coupled with severe time dilation, had cost him several Earth years. He failed to keep his promise. He couldn't go back to his daughter. She had grown up, and she had grown old. And ironically, she would be the one to bring him back. There's so many things going right in the film, and I can't stop gushing about it. Matthew McConaughey balances the role of a rustic farmer, caring father, and skilled astronaut. His iconic scene where he breaks down has a separate fan base. Then there's Anne Hathaway and Timothée Chalamet. Perfect eye candies, right? I also really love the soundtrack. It's Hans Zimmer after all. As for the man himself, Christopher Nolan never fails to deliver, and Interstellar is another proud feather in his cap. 4. Gravity, 2013. In all the films we talked about so far, the astronauts were stranded on something: spacecraft, soil, time loops. But then we come across this film where the survivors don't even have ground beneath their feet. They float through space with nothing to cling onto except themselves. Scary, right? Dr. Ryan Stone, a medical engineer, and Matt Kowalski, a veteran astronaut, are sent on a routine space mission. It's her first time in space. It's his last time before retirement. As the blue planet glared at them from down below, they worked on the shuttle in peace, conducting regular spacewalks. They soon learn about the explosion of a Russian satellite, and a piece of debris comes hurtling at their spaceship, killing the rest of the crew and destroying the shuttle. Now the duo is cut off from all channels of communication. They are tethered to each other and spiraling out into the void. Drifting along the orbit at the mercy of mere gravity, the duo must find a way to return to Earth. Resources are scarce, and Stone's oxygen begins to run out pretty quick. The sheer brutality of estrangement and the piercing shrill of silence in space make them confront their own fears of mortality. Stranded in deep space, the only way to reach home is to venture further into space. Together, they may not survive, and that's where veteran wisdom comes into play. The film actually left me speechless. These 90 minutes of showtime have some of the most intense, nail-biting moments ever. It's one of the most accurate sci-fis of all time. Gravity becomes the single most important force, determining their fates. The ultimate hope lies in mastering the laws of physics and using gravity to your favor. Also, Sandra Bullock and George Clooney bring out the deepest, darkest emotions on screen. Stone's anxiety as she's manhandled by gravity is balanced by Kowalski's calm composure. No wonder the movie has become an all-time favorite. 5. The Right Stuff, 1983. Back in the day, Chuck Yeager broke the sound barrier. That is, he steered his aircraft to reach supersonic speed, which seemed impossible till then. That created quite a hype, and man has only looked up to the dark heavens since then. It's the late 50s. The Soviets have just launched their Sputnik satellite, so now the US has to double the efforts in catching up in the space race. Thus begins the US space program, with Project Mercury, where 7 astronauts were chosen for flight. The hilarious part is that no one has a clue about what they are doing. No one really knows how to conduct the whole recruitment process, and that's what makes this venture even more daunting. These astronauts become celebrities as the nation reeled under a hollow sense of fascination towards everything dark and spacey. They would have fancy articles that made them seem important on the pages of Life magazine, and they would appear on TV like they were the space BTS. Having said that, their work was risky and the times were ancient. Technology hadn't developed so much, and nothing really came with a handy NASA manual on space treks. To top it all, there was a decent chunk of animosity and passive aggression amongst the 7 stalwarts, with each of them having a different ambition and a conflicting set of values. Safe to say, the film has all the right stuff in it. The cast is fantastic, with Dennis Quaid and Sam Shepard stealing hearts. The plot is well-paced, instead of rushed, and that helps to build a narrative that mimics docudrama and epic history through a lens of realism. The vintage overtone is just the cherry on the cake for a modern audience. So it's a 10 out of 10. This is a movie you just cannot miss. 6. Hidden Figures, 2016. If the genre of intergalactic travel and extraterrestrial life seemed like a men's club so far, this film, Hidden Figures, is just what you need. The premise isn't very unique. It's the same old Russia versus US space race where NASA has to bring together a team of extraordinary mathematicians, technicians, and astronauts in order to send a man to space. John Glenn is chosen to be momentously launched into orbit before returning safely to Earth, and a team of 3 African-American women, Dorothy Vaughan, Mary Jackson, and Katherine Goebel-Johnson, act as the brain of the operation. They literally act as human computers and rise to topmost ranks in the organization, making the entire project possible in the first place. The mission is supposed to be the biggest one in US history so far, and these women defy all boundaries of race and gender. Uniting in their desire to dream big and aim higher, they emerge as the true heroes of the nation. As a documentary drama, the film is no doubt great. There's the whole civil rights angle and the whole feminism angle. But what really struck me is the realism that the film portrayed. You have to cut it some slack because it may not be painstakingly accurate. For example, NASA didn't have flat panel screens back then. Communications between the ground and the Mercury capsules were not static free. But there's something that just feels right, that feels very real, very sci-fi. And it's for this reason you can't miss it. 7. Contact, 1997. Food for thought. Are we alone in this universe? Is there alien life even if we can't see it? Maybe it exists, but we'll never know, because no signal coming from these civilizations can travel faster than the speed of light. This paradox has baffled scientists and poets across the globe, and films on alien contact have skyrocketed the charts. When Ellie was a little girl, her father introduced her to the idea of faraway lands and fascinating lives there. At 9, she was left an orphan, with nothing but her lingering love for extraterrestrial contact. As she grew up, she is now astronomer Dr. Ellie Arroway, who works on a special mission at SETI, aka the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. She may be super talented, but her challenges are equally pressing. At first, the NSF, or the National Science Foundation, withdrew funding from her project, calling her quests more science fiction than science. So Ellie had to search for funding elsewhere, and her bunch of rogue scientist colleagues were not the easiest to deal with. One fine day, they hear some unusual chatter from the vicinity of the star Vega, and immediately they knew they weren't alone in this universe. But their joy was short-lived. Politicians, the military, religious leaders, and rival scientists hovered like vultures over her project. The mysterious messages she received were then decoded, and the results were insane. It would shake her whole worldview, and the project would take on a life of its own. The film boasts a stellar cast, with Jodie Foster, David Morse, Tom Skerritt, and Sir John Hurt keeping all eyes glued to the screen. The writing is typical of Carl Sagan's cosmic anticipation, and Ellie's character is riveting throughout the film. In the end, she is asked, could it have been an illusion, a projected, manufactured experience? To this, she replies, yes, but deep in her heart, she knows otherwise. The moral lessons and the debilitating truth still rings clear in her ears. 8. First Man, 2018. Neil Armstrong went on to rewrite the fate of humanity, ushering in new milestones for stardust like us. He was the first human to set foot on the moon, scribbling the success of the historic Apollo 11 mission with sheer zeal and love for the nation. But he wasn't always this person whose name would be celebrated across history and textbooks. Before being accepted into the Gemini program that immortalized him, he was an ordinary human. The film is set against the US-Soviet Cold War that spilled over the race to space. The Soviets had been outdoing the Americans at every step, and the national demand for redemption was growing intense. In this semi-fictionalized biography, Armstrong emerges as a character. He is stoic, and his face rarely gives away the feelings in his heart. Maybe he just doesn't feel anything in the first place. His sharp disconnect with his wife Janet Armstrong is jarring, to say the least. The path of his fated destiny is both fortunate and unfortunate, for him as well as for his colleagues. A single mistake can cost him heavily, but he is ultimately chosen as the flight commander for Apollo 11, and the rest is history. The film is based on the book First Man, The Life of Neil A. Armstrong by James R. Hansen. Here, director Damien Chazelle and writer Josh Singer borrowed the chronicle of an American triumph and turned it into a personal tale, showing us the face of the man behind the popularity of the name. Emotionally drenched and cinematographically intense, the film features a steamy Ryan Gosling as the lead. Claire Foy's performance as his wife is also hot. It's a pity that the film didn't just blow up, but either way, it's gained a cult following because of the realism with which the story has been crafted. 9. 2001: A Space Odyssey, 1968. Ever wondered what created life on Earth? Some say it's God. Some say it was a biochemical accident. Some say we always existed across time. 2001: A Space Odyssey is a story of evolution. Something or someone mysteriously placed a huge black cube on Earth. You could see it from everywhere. It's polished at the edges and looks like advanced tech that is beyond human comprehension. Whether it's a tech monolith or a supernatural one, it's left for the audience to gauge. But one thing is for certain: this immensely powerful block was responsible for triggering evolution on Earth. It made humans reach the moon, where another monolith was present. So that brings a lot of questions to the mind. What is this block? Are the events in the film happening now, or is it showing us an alternate reality? Is the block always present and predetermining our actions, making us bask in the illusion of free will? Is it that we can never really see this omnipresent entity, even though it is always clearly there? Does it stand for God? The film doesn't answer any of these questions, and that has left critics and viewers torn. Some find meaning amidst this vagueness and love the film, while others are left befuddled with this uncertainty. But the visuals of space in the film are absolutely breathtaking. New landscapes pop out, and both the cinematography and the storyline were way ahead of its time. Let's not forget that this was 1968, and AI wasn't a common thing back then. Yet we see mankind trying to encounter the monolith placers with the help of the superintelligence called HAL. Written by Arthur C. Clarke and directed by Stanley Kubrick, the film was nothing short of revolutionary. Even today, it ranks amongst the topmost films of all time. So if you're in the mood for some casual, slow-paced cinematography, this one's your go-to. 10. Moon, 2009. Sam Bell is the lone occupant of a manufacturing facility on the moon, and he gets super anxious about returning home when his 3-year contract ends. Devastatingly alone, his only companion on the barren planet is his supercomputer and personal assistant Gertie. You obviously can't have constant communication directly with Earth, but there are times when he gets a message or two from his wife Tess. So he's been mostly talking to himself, or at times to his plants. Unfortunately, Sam meets with an accident, and to his utter surprise, he realizes that he isn't alone. Plus, his entire perspective shifts as he realizes that the world he inhabits isn't the one he thought it was. Now, I won't deny that it's a mix of art and sci-fi, and the art part slows down the story, but the sci-fi part is absolutely spot on. The shots of the moon rovers and harvesters were astonishingly real. Then Rockwell's stunning performance, rooted in emotions, contrasted against Kevin Spacey's voice as an AI bot, brings depth to the narrative. The film is an underrated masterpiece in this genre that definitely demands a sequel to bring justice to the original one. 11. Gatka, 1997. Somewhere in the distant future, man travels to the stars. He isn't deemed perfect. In fact, Vincent Freeman is ranked very low by society. Why? It turns out that his genetic constitution makes him fall into the lowest classes of humans, so he's considered useful only for a handful of odd menial jobs. But Freeman cannot be caged that easily. He needs to move ahead in life, so he takes on the identity of one Jerome Morrow, who was considered to be the perfect genetic specimen. Morrow is now paraplegic after a car accident made him sedentary. Freeman seeks professional help in order to learn how to deceive DNA and urine sample testings. But hold on. Everything can't be this perfect, right? Freeman had just made it to the final lap before his space travel began. That's when his program director was murdered, and everyone became a suspect of the police. The real question is, can Vincent hide the truth, or will his lie cost him his life? The movie was pretty ambitious for its time. It dealt with some of the darker themes within sci-fi, such as discrimination and modification of genes, loss of identity, and the tyrannical control of space tech over individual lives. The film pans out like a dream: innovation, bold, powerful, and evocative. The editing and tech isn't overwhelmingly over the top, and that sort of simplicity actually makes the story feel very real. The world in Gatka isn't a different world. It's our very own world with slight modifications. The story is simply sublime. 12. Sunshine, 2007. In the vast darkness of space, what lights our little world is the sun. It burns bright so that we can bask in its mellow light, pot plants that bloom into trees, and we reap the fruits of our labor in its warm glow. But the sun, too, has a lifespan, and it's dying out due to dark energy destabilizing its core. Earth is retreating into another glacial phase, and this time it's irreversible. But not all hope is lost. A team of 8 astronauts is sent on the Icarus II mission to blast a deadly weapon into the sun, which would trigger a supernova. The crew? First of all, we have Dr. Robert Capa, played by none other than Cillian Murphy. He's basically the physicist overseeing the final calculations for the stellar payload's deployment and detonation. Then we have Captain Kaneda, the hyper-focused, no-bullshit leader of the mission. Chris Evans plays the character of Mace, an engineer who lends a military perspective to the mission. Then there's Dr. Searle, played by Cliff Curtis. He's the ship's counselor and medical officer. Cassie is the pilot, who serves as the crew's emotional tether, while Trey is the tech-savvy navigator. Harv is the first officer and communication specialist, and last but not least, Corazon is a botanist who maintains the oxygen garden that provides both food and carbon to atmosphere recycling during the trip. One mistake, and what's at stake is not just the survival of the crew, but the fate of humanity itself. The film offers action, violence, suspense, and science. Overall, it's a visual thriller that somehow got lost when it first came out. But for lovers of sci-fi thrillers, this one is a cherry on the cake. Marvelous verdict. Sci-fi realism has a huge cult following, with new films and newer ideas flooding the market every year. They don't just portray mindless action and horror. Instead, they offer an immersive experience where fiction is carefully measured and the events are scientifically plausible. They open new doors of imagination and challenge the way we view our significance in the cosmos. Us humans may not have stepped foot on distant planets or exchanged banter with alien life yet, but the characters in these films have. Today, we don't know if we will even live to experience these, and trust me, we're better that way. No one wants the sun dying out or getting stranded in the middle of nothingness. But these films remind us that we are just lucky that everything is normal with us in our comfy little homes on this blue planet. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one. Be safe. Thanks, everyone.